So is Podcast 101 by the provider Siggis Dairy worthy of your time? Well, that really depends. If you just want to learn about podcasting and you don't need a CPE, I would probably skip this and I'd go to YouTube. You get the information in a way more concise manner. This podcast goes into a little too much detail. But if you just need the free CPE and you also want to learn podcasting, then this would be worthy of your time. Other than that, skip it. So I wanted to give you a little bit review of a free CEU instead of the paid one. Again, we're coming up on the end of a cycle, March or May, whatever the heck it is. And I was on the lookout for some free CEUs or CPEs. And I came across this website, Dietitian Hub, that had some on there. So let's kind of walk through the process and I'll let you know how this free CPE went. So here we are on Dietitian Hub, and you can see that there's a bunch of continuing education in here, but I wanted to navigate to the free CPE, and I was trying to find one that kind of would interest me a little bit. So what I came across was this Podcasting 101. So let's click on that. Wait for it to load. Every CPE credit is about 1 hour of work. So that's kind of what I wanted to go over was, is this Podcasting 101 for one CPE worth the 1 hour of work? And this is Siggis.com. Oh yeah, Siggis Dairy is the provider. Jenny Amos, RDN. And you can see that the performance indicators are here, 2.1.4 and 5.1.1. Learning needs, description. Podcasting 101 will focus on the basics of creating a podcast with overviews of the technical skills, promotions, and equipment you'll need to create your own successful podcast. I find this pretty interesting, especially for like if you're an unconventional RD, which I consider myself. I don't really work in the clinical environment anymore or outpatient. I'm more of in an unconventional row. I sort of manage a food bank still. I'm a little bit higher up now, but I also do a lot of content creation, which what I consider unconventional for a dietitian right now. So the speaker of this podcast is David Power. I don't know anything about him. We'll go through this. Oh, it says it's a 60-minute session, which is quite long, but we'll see what happens. It doesn't say really anything else about the CPE. I don't know if there's a test at the end of it or we just get a certificate, but you can follow along. I'll probably fast forward the whole video because we're not going to make this 60 minutes long, but I will go through it. So it says register here. Click on it. You got to enter your passcode to get in here. Submit. And then it just brings you to their main page of all their free CEUs, which I think is pretty cool. If you're looking for free CEUs, this is a great opportunity. And I'm actually going to put out another piece of content that goes over all the free CEUs I know of. So if you know of any free CEUs, just mention them in the comments and I will be sure to check those ones out and put them in the video and mention you by name. So we got a couple here. Performance on a plant-forward diet, nutrition, health, and COVID. Cultural consideration with counseling, always a good one. Behind the label, look at added sugar, the power of protein, nothing. The path of publishing would be a neat one. But I will look at that one later. This Podcasting 101 fits within my learning plan. I have 3.22 on my learning plan. So that's the one I'm going to go over. Let's click on the video and see what this is all about. I'm not sure what the slides are, but I'm going to click on the video first.
First of all, I am the author of the best-selling book, Introduction to Podcast Technology, which is available on Amazon.com in both paperback and Kindle formats, and is also available as an audiobook on audible.com. In addition to that, I am the host and producer of the Surefire podcast, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a moment. I am also a filmmaker, and I have somewhere close.
All right, so right at the bat, I'm kind of irritated. I know this is a free podcast, but there's a lot of self-promotion on this, and I understand it's from Siggis, and he probably did this for free, maybe. I don't know, but little too much on the self-promotion. Let's just move on and get to the training, right? It's already an hour. So I think this is pretty useful information and it can be applied to other medias. For YouTube, for example, the creation process is 5 steps that David Power says. First, plan, record, produce, distribute, promote. I think you can apply that to YouTube super easily if you're thinking about getting into this type of media. So keep that in mind when you're listening to this training. I think it's pretty good. So let's move on, see what else he has. Still getting into some useless information about some personal anecdotes about what is and isn't a podcast. And back end, professional services, coaching, and info products. Besides the fluff in the beginning, so far it's been great. The teacher of this training has a caution. He's like, don't start a podcast solely to make money. Well, I mean, I get it. Like, I make YouTube videos because I enjoy doing it. But in the end, I want to monetize this stuff and make money off of it. So I don't necessarily agree. He's really got a big caution on his slide that says, hey, there could be consequences to this, which I get. But probably the reason you're starting a podcast or a YouTube channel is so hopefully that you can make money with that channel. So the next thing that's talked about is kind of the show format and the structure of the show and everything you need to do to get started. Very valuable information, but too much information. I think this might scare the beginner podcaster from even starting. Sometimes you just got to get in there and do it. Not everything has to be perfect. All right. If you want to go make a podcast or YouTube video, just go do it. You'll learn as you go and you'll get better. And YouTube and the podcast software will give you analytics to tell you what's working. So instead of trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work before you do it, go in there and practice. It's like on the job training. It's the perfect way to learn. So that would be my suggestion. His show format stuff is interesting. You know, there's pros and cons, frequency, weekly, bi-weekly, daily. You know, you don't really know any of that stuff. You may want to do it. You may think you can do it every day, but then you realize, hey, I can't edit the video or the audio quick enough to do one every single day. So again, I think it's good. My opinion is, hey, just go out there and do it. I wasn't really planning on talking about the CPE, like if I agree or not. And it was more about whether this is CPE worthy of your time. But I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about this stuff. So one cool thing was there's no test. Overall, it was an easy 1 CPE. I think it was a tad over an hour, though. It wasn't just an hour. Overall, I thought it was a good podcast. I think it really just depends on where you're at in your podcasting. If you're a beginner podcaster, I think I would, like I said earlier, move on to YouTube probably and find a more efficient one. This one went into really, really deep detail and gave you a lot of unnecessary information, you know, about mixers and microphones. Like, I think that thing is good overall, but nowadays you can just get your iPhone out and record a podcast and upload it. And I would venture to say that if you're just starting out, that's what I would do. Don't go out and buy all this expensive equipment to get your podcast done. I would just pick your topic, go. He goes and explains more about podcasts like Q&A or narrative, which one takes longer to format. I think that's good information. The software like Audacity and iTunes, which I think useful information, how to produce it. And he went really into a lot of information about the equalization. And again, I don't think this is going to be useful to the beginner podcaster. Maybe if you're been doing it for a couple of years, this would be worth it. But talking about high pass and low pass frequencies, like, listen, I make a ton of content. I don't care. If it sounds close enough, it's good. I mean, you want good sound when you're doing these things, but I don't think at this moment you need to be worried about frequencies. Talks about some plugins, how do you distribute it, which I think is probably one of the more important things. iTunes, MP3, lip sync. Talks about metadata, directory listings. Apple Podcasts is the number one directory. That's where I would put it for sure if you're just starting out there, and Spotify. And then how to promote it on WordPress, Facebook, all the social media sites, obviously. So in the end, do I recommend this podcast? Sure. It wasn't a big deal. It's a free CPE. Siggis overall has a bunch of resources on there, so you could probably get like 10 of them pretty easily if that's what you needed. Now I have one, so check it out.